We're back. So this was pretty interesting yesterday. Donald Trump found himself a little bit out of his element at a bipartisan event in New Hampshire, facing a tough crowd instead of his usual flock of adoring supporters. Voters keeping him on his toes with some pretty interesting questions. So watch this and see how you think he did.
In the spirit of problem solving, I'm wondering if you're at all concerned that some of the divisive language you use on the campaign trail undermines your ability to solve problems.
I have to say what I do. You know what? I don't want to necessarily be politically correct all the way down the line. When it becomes a different kind of a situation, you'll see I'm going to be much less divisive.
Compromise has become a dirty word.
I like the word compromise. We need compromise. There's nothing wrong with compromise, but it's always good to compromise and win, meaning let's compromise and win.
Maybe you can prove me wrong, but I don't think that you're a friend to women.
I have given women more opportunity than I would say virtually anybody in the construction industry.
So if you become president, will a woman make the same as a man? And do I get to choose what I do with my body?
You're going to make the same if you do as good a job. You're going to make the same if you do as good a job, and I happen to be pro-life.
Pretty interesting, huh? All right, let's bring in Matthew Littman, former senior advisor to President Obama's 2008 campaign and a former speechwriter for President Joe Biden. Rich Lowry is editor of the National Review and a Fox News contributor. Welcome, guys. Great to have you with us. This was interesting. And, Trump is doing something that, he's taking in all the questions. He stood up there. We're going to talk about one of the questioners in a moment. But just overall, Rich, how do you think he did?
I think it's a win for Trump, just the fact that he went to a skeptical or perhaps hostile crowd, stood there in the middle of them, and took all the questions and didn't back down. I mean, the great advantage to Trump is that he projects strength, and most Republicans are going to look at how he performed yesterday in that crowd and think he was strong.
Yeah. Matt, what did you think?
I agree with Rich. I think that this was a great job by Trump. Keeps him exactly what people like about him is that he is strong and he stands his ground, whether I agree with him or not. He's leading in the polls. This won't affect him. I also think, this no labels organization, to me, I like labels. I like Democrat and Republican, and I don't think these organizations really do a lot of good. So I have to say Trump did the right thing.
Yeah. Rich, he has an appeal not just to the Republican base that he's, generated a lot of interest from, but according to this crowd yesterday, perhaps also to people who are independent and even perhaps some Democrats. Does he not?
Yeah, and he does. Now, politics is not all about theater, but it's a huge element of theater, and Trump gets that in a way that no other candidate, Republican or Democratic, does. I'm skeptical of him in Iowa, where I think it's going to be a tough hoe at the end of the day, but New Hampshire, as you point out, could be a real strength for him because that's a state where you can draw in people who are independents, who aren't necessarily hardcore Republicans, and they'll like Trump's kind of independence. And everyone thinks that Trump is an outrageous right-winger. You actually look at his substantive views, he's more like a raging moderate, which again is a place that can succeed in New Hampshire.
Yeah, an oxymoron, but perhaps a recipe for some success, at least in New Hampshire, as you say. There's a lot of discussion about whether or not the young woman that you saw in the video that we just showed may have been a plant from the Bush campaign. And here's what they say about that. Let's put it up on the screen for everybody at home to see this morning. It says, like many New Hampshire, Lauren is a student at St. A's who is passionate about and active in politics and attended this event on her own accord. While this question was not sanctioned by the campaign, we cannot help but notice Mr. Trump does seem to be very sensitive about being challenged by women. Matt, what do you think about that?
Well, I think it may as well have been a Trump plant because he knocks these things out of the park. And if it sounds like Bush is planting somebody in the audience, that just works to Trump's advantage. I will just say, though, that I disagree slightly with Rich on the raging moderate label for Trump. I don't find the deportation of the immigrants, the 12 million people in the country, as a moderate position. I think that's a pretty radical position.
Rich?
Well, you just look where he is on immigration. He's quite far to the right. But you look at entitlements. He says, no, we don't need to reform them. He's talked about, although his plan doesn't actually exemplify this, but he's talked about taxing the rich and taxing hedge fund guys. And he's been very critical of George W. Bush and traditional Republican foreign policy. So you actually look where he is as black and white positions. It's much more interesting than just being an outrageous right-winger. Not that there's anything wrong with being an outrageous right-winger.
But those tax positions, Rich, those tax positions, Rich, the ones that he's come out with, taxing the hedge fund guys, I think everybody's on board with. But those positions that he's come out with are pretty far to the right in terms of the plan that he's actually proposed.
Matt, are you nervous? Are you nervous about him, Matt, when it comes to Hillary or Bernie Sanders or even Biden?
I'm certainly not nervous about Trump. I like the fact that he's going on Twitter, and I actually agree with him that these debates are going to be pretty boring. If you ask me, 6 debates is too many.
Yeah.
I think there should be about 2 debates, and I really think that there are too many debates.
Matt and Rich, thank you very much, guys. Good
Thanks,
to see
Martha.
you.